What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Warframe video. If you guys, I do apologize to those who are waiting for the live stream to be next. I just wanted to explain why the Duviri paradox is one of the most anticipated updates for Warframe. It's not really the content that is bringing, it's more so the storyline that's going to proceed afterwards, once it drops. And I'll go deeper into what I'm saying later on in the video. But if you guys are new to my channel, I do a lot of Warframe content as well as some other games if you guys want to check out the playlist. Before I do talk about the next Duviri Paradox update, I wanted to go over what Warframe is. A lot of new players are entering into Warframe this year with a lot of changes. I hear a lot of comments saying that it does not look the same, and they're right. There has been a lot of changes and gameplay additions and features that they added onto Warframe that made it look bigger than what it started out to. And I kind of wanted to give you guys that lore perception so you guys can understand what's going on with Warframe, so you guys don't get confused about any of the future updates that come out. So if you have no idea what Warframe is, go ahead and grab your favorite snacks, go ahead and get some popcorn, get your favorite drink, and get a heated blanket and just relax. I'm about to take you on a ride of what is Warframe Story Edition. I promise I'm going to use terminology that's probably not too confusing for you. This should be an explanation in which everyone could understand. So the beginning of Warframe started off with the Orkan system. Just like how we have our solar system, there was an Orkan system, with different planets, just like Earth, Mars. You guys have seen it, when you do your missions. This system was ruled by, of course, the Orkan, which were the last descendants of humanity, I guess. But they were so highly skilled in bioengineering, and they had a lot of intelligence, so they were very skilled in genetic engineering and creating people. That's one feature that allowed them to live so long, is because they knew how the body works and how to prolong their lifespan. With this ability, the Orkan did want to kind of persuade or enforce this ideology on a lot of people. So of course, they wanted to rule in a society that respected their values, in which that's why everything you see from the Orkan is gold. Every prime item has like that gold hint to it. It's because the Orkan designed it to give value to knowledge, give value to the knowledge that they had, and they wanted a society in which that worshiped that. That's more on the ideology side of Warframe lore, but further after that, they created the Corpus and the Grineer. These are two popular enemies that you've seen throughout Warframe. These creatures or not creatures, but organisms were in fact created by the Orkan. Of course, they needed a workforce in which they created the Grineer, and they needed people to manage the economy, basically, and money and the economy of the Orkan system. So they created the Corpus. Now there was hierarchies in this society. Corpus were kind of seen as the back laborers of the society, in which there was like a rebel force which was led by your boy Parvos. I'll get into that in another video if you guys wanted to, but there was a lot of this was a society created by the Orkan. There was other people living under Orkan rule, and as you know, a utopia usually doesn't last that long. There's some sort of evil that's hiding behind it, in which the Orkan's policies were very harsh and can seem as evil. But that was just one of their problems. The main issue that approached this Orkan system was their population control. They did realize that they wanted to expand, and they were running out of resources to support this society. So they tasked the Archimedeians, which are basically the Orkan still, but they are the top researchers, just like how we have NASA. They tasked these Archimedeians on finding a problem or finding a solution to overpopulation, or find a solution to their lack of resources, in which they stumbled upon the Void. The Void was this rift in space. It was this source of unknown energy, in which helped develop most of their weapons as well as their technology. But this Void showed them the Tau system. The Tau system was their go-to, like, okay, that's more access to resources that would help our society keep functioning. They ended up creating another being, just like how they created the Grineer and the Corpus. They created the Sentience. These were creatures that lacked sentience, which is feelings or emotions. That's why they named them that. They had these creatures usually go to other planets and terraform so they can expand this society. Later on the line, you learn that the Sentience eventually realize the problem that they're trying to solve. They realize that the Orokin has a resource issue, and they might just be victims under their control if they keep following the Orokin, and they don't want that. They don't want to follow the same footsteps that the Orokin is doing. They're like, you guys are going to doom our race as well. So they started to rebel a little bit and gain sentience. They realized that they lacked certain freedoms that other creatures had, and that kind of made them go against the Orokin even more. And on top of that, when they discovered the Void is kind of the weakness to sentience. So the Sentients found it hard to kind of work with their creator when the creator is having this weakness that can actually kill them, and lets you know that Sentients were resistant to everything. So having a weakness is of course going to scare them away. So that started tensions between the Sentients and the Orokin. Let's backtrack towards the Void. Before they started realizing how they can harness the Void's energy, they sent out a specific ship and tasked them with going to the Void. You know, they wanted to add a humanoid touch to this new system. So they tasked the Zeramin 10-0 ship, which was a group of you know, regular humans called Tennos, and they tasked them and they sent them on this like Noah's Ark but in space. And their, you know, journey was to warp drive into the Void. Of course, something bad happens on the ship when they are going through the Void, in which they meet the kids meet this man called the Man in the Wall. This guy is still unknown of you, This guy is still mysterious. You know, we do hear him now and then, and you guys might start your missions with seeing your own operator sitting on the desk. So there's still lore behind this guy that we don't know, but you end up meeting this Man in the Void, and it causes everyone on the ship to go insane. You know, all of the adults on the ship ended up murdering each other. There's stories and lore of Warframe where there was this, I'm not going into specifics, but there was these kids in the classroom, and kids were getting kicked out the classrooms and they were getting murdered from the adults outside, and they were kind of barricading themselves in the classrooms. When the ships came back drifting into the Orokin system, they realized that everyone on the ship was dead except for the remaining students. These students came back with special abilities that were given to them from the Void. These special abilities allowed the Tenno to harness these new created suits called Warframes. These were also created by the Orokins. There's more lore going over how the suits were created, but they realized that they usually, I think they had researchers like the Archimedeians create their technology mixed with the infested, and it allowed them to create these suits called Warframes. And they realized that the operators, or the Tennos, can use this new machine that they allow for transference, which is like how the avatar works, that allows the operators to use the Void energy and take control of these Warframe suits. Now, in the Old War, this whole era of Warframe is called the Old War. So if you hear the Old War reference in Warframe, this is the timeline and before the game starts for a lot of new players. The Orokin consisted of the top high council members called the Seven. One of the Seven was named the Lotus, or aka Margulis. Margulis kind of was like the mother to the Tenno. You know, she realized that the Tennos can only really control their powers when they were in sleep mode. Like, they couldn't handle the energy within them, so it would cause them to go into a frantic. A lot of you guys remember the Harrow's quest. Harrow was one of the Tennos that kind of wasn't really picked up by anybody and was captured by one of the factions, in which they had a suit, and you know, that Tenno, without any restraint on his powers or any help with control over it, was on a murderous spree. And later on you find out you have to go hunt him down and everything. But This was getting to the peak and the end of the Orcan system. Of course, there was tensions between the Sentience and the Orcan. The Orcan was doing research with the Hemlith, which caused them to create the infestation, which was this virus that kind of got out of control. This virus was purposely built to kind of fight against the infestation. Was a problem that occurred during the Old War that kind of damaged all factions. You know, it was a very frightening event for everybody, and it just threw the whole Orcan system out of control. Like, it just went downhill from there. The Sentients fled away, but the master of the Sentients, which is an important character for you guys to remember, is Hun Hao. So the Sentients fled with Hun Hao. Hun Hao's daughter is actually the character we know as the Lotus. Her real name is Nata, but this Sentient really has a unique ability, which is the ability to transform into people. Now, Hun Hao's main plan was to get Nata to kind of brainwash the Tennos to get them to rebel against the Orcan. That's how they wanted. They wanted to destroy their enemy by taking control from within and having them turn against them, in which they would get the rule back. Margulis was like the mother to the Tenno. The Orcan were kind of strict. I know I told you that they're really corrupt individuals, so they were strict against the rules that they had, and one of the rules was not to really have like this attachment towards the Tennos, in which they had Margulis executed. So Nata used her abilities to make herself look like the Lotus. You know, she made herself look like Margulis, so that the Tennos can kind of accept her more than seeing her as just a sentient enemy. That helped her persuasiveness. But as she did work with the Tennos and helped them gain their control over their powers, she also started to get like an attachment to the Tennos. So her position and where she stood and which side she was fighting for kind of was getting swayed at this moment, but it was obviously that she was more in supporting the Tennos than supporting her father's main mission. This eventually leads up to the reason of why the new war happened, but I'll get into that later. So as we backtrack, Nata eventually did her father's plan. The Tenno did see the corruption behind the Orcan and ended up killing the Seven. You know, they slaughtered the Orcan and destroyed the moon. And after they kind of rebelled against the Orcan leaders, they kind of disappeared, because I feel like the battle and the war and the combat situations they had to experience was just too traumatizing for them. Resources were getting fought over between the Grineer and the Corpus. The stories of how the Corpus and the Grineer went into war. The Sentients were still off in space. You know, they fled somewhere far beyond the Tau system. So Hun Hao is just over there chilling, and we don't really see the Tennos again until we start the game. And this is what brings us to the beginning of Warframe, to where new players, when they start the game, this is where they enter the storyline, which is the reawakening of your operator, or the reawakening of the Tenno. When you do start Warframe, you do see a cutscene of like this villager girl running away from the Grineer. That's explaining why how the Grineer was kind of like expanding their control over the fallen Orcan Empire and just scavenging for resources. There was Grineer captains that were scavenging for Orcan material and ancient Orcan weaponry that can help them get a leverage in the war or their control over this society, in which they did stumble upon a Orcan key that would lead them to a place where they can find an ancient Warframe suit. Now, you know that if they gain access to a Warframe suit, they definitely would gain the power and the leverage over the Corpus. So they went, and the villager girl stumbled upon the relic before the Grineer captain did, and this is where you choose which Warframe you want to start as. As you fight your way out of the Grineer control, you do get the help of the Lotus, who is trying to get you back on your ship. You do meet your new AI friend called Ortis, and she kind of gives you a rundown. You know, the system fucked up. Everything is out of disarray. You know, we got to pit all of these factions back into check, and that is what you're tasked with. So your journey to kind of restore the not the Orcan Empire, but just restore the intergalactic railroads that connected the planets together, kind of bring stability back to this society. That is your mission. Now, this journey kind of consists of a many story quests. It consists of many side missions and grinding, and this is where the learning curve kind of kicks in for a lot of players that might even push them away from Warframe. But this is the journey and the meat of Warframe as you complete your star chart. As you go throughout each planet, you meet a lot of enemies, you meet a lot of you know, factions, like the clans that you can join and gain free weapons and armor and whatnot. And you meet your boy Tension. Tension becomes like your master and helps you, basically disciplines you as you do your journey. When you do complete the star chart, there is another mode called Steel Path, which is basically the same thing, but all of the enemies are level 100 or higher, and there's 100% mod drop chance, resource drop chance, and Steel Essence. You do meet this enemy called the Stalker. The Stalker is just like you know, Warframe basically, that is trying to take revenge out on the Tenno for slaughtering the Orcan Empire. I feel like he doesn't know why it happened, so he's kind of acting out in revenge against the Tenno. So every time you do defeat a boss, this boy's coming after you. When you're in Steel Path, I feel like he has like these little sidekicks called acolytes. They're all tasked to come after you for, you know, slaughtering the Orcan. And they kind of also work with the Sentience, I think. So just so you know where they're standing at and where their head's at, that's who the Stalker is. But as you are, you know, in this part of Warframe, everybody's unique adventure, or everyone's adventure, is very unique. You know, everyone tackles different planets differently, or different missions differently, or you guys take different Warframes out. And this is kind of where a lot of players built their Warframe identity, and they start to learn how the weapons work, how modding, how weaknesses, and how their abilities work. Until we get to the next big chunk of the story lore, which is finding our operator. Now, a lot of players don't even know that you aren't the Warframe. You are actually your Tenno still. You're that kid that was on that Zariman ship, and you find your original body, and you can customize them however you want. But your, you know, operator does have their own set of abilities that can end up making your Warframe even stronger. As you are working, you know, together, operator and Warframes in hand, you end up learning about who the Lotus really is as you get closer to the New War story quest. You find out that, you know, the Lotus is actually Nata. You know, she did come from the Sentience, and she can just shapeshift. And it was like Nata was kind of having an identity crisis at this moment, trying to see which side she was on. So this whole part was our battle for our mama. Basically, we try to get our mother back. But you do learn a lot of lore during the New War. The Sentients do come back, and they plan a full edge attack, because it's kind of like how Goku was sent to Earth to destroy the planet, but he hit his head, and Raditz had to come and do it. That's what the situation is. So Hun Hao's coming with the Sentient army to take over, and in this part it starts to get interesting because we meet another person called the Drifter. The Drifter is actually ourselves from another timeline in the distant future, where, you know, the Orcan is still alive. It's this weird paradox between the future and the past, where the void can distort time like that, and where our future self does try to help out our past self so that our timeline don't probably ends up like his. And this is why, this is a little bit of why Duviri paradox is going to be interesting. So after the New War, you know, you play as different characters. You play as Cal, you play as some Corpus do that just end up dying. You play as Tension, and you're fighting against the Sentients, you know. So spoiler warning, just giving you a heads up. You do gain access to play as your Drifter, which is basically you from the future. This is where the you know, the Zariman ship appears on your map. So if you're wondering what that Zariman update was, I think Jairi came out with this update. This update is when the ship reappeared in our Orcan system. We can see it on their map approaching from this weird location, which is Duviri paradox, and that's where this hype is coming from. The next update is going to be giving us access to this next open world in the Void. They just added, you know, open world in Cetus, on Fortuna, on Deimos, and now it's the Void version of, or I guess the Sentient version of the open world. Now the Zeramin ship was important because this is when the operator do learn about the histories and the past events that happened before he woke up. He does learn about what happened on the ship. He starts to learn a little bit about the man in the wall. You know, who is this creature that gifted us these powers in the first place, that we still really don't have any idea about. So the Duviri paradox is a crazy ass update because we don't know what's going to happen next, and that is basically what my video kind of is engulfing. I wanted to give you guys that lore weight to the storyline of Warframe so you guys can kind of understand why the game is being built in a certain way. It's so they can portray these lore events better. You know, as you can tell, like, there's more cinematics, there are more features in Warframe, like us being able to play as other characters. That is just bringing out the lore part of Warframe. Warframe isn't drifting away from its roots, you know, as being a Warframe game. If you guys remember the dev stream, there is ways for us to gain our Warframe. You know, we choose our Warframe still in our loadouts. We just have to work our way up to it. And they also created like a new mode with our Warframes in which we can use these perks that we gain during these weird survival missions, in which the mission changes every 5 minutes. You know, it can go from a defense to a survival and then flip to an interception and flip to another mode. So they still have these sections of the Duviri paradox that are still Warframe based, but they are expanding on the Drifter's journey, in which to give us that side of the lore aspect of Warframe. So if you guys understood that little story, I know it was kind of like the fast version of Warframe lore, and please forgive me if I butchered anything, but yeah, the Duviri paradox is going to be crazy because it's the next step of this story. The crazy thing is, for this update, is that Hunhao, which is, you know, the Lotus's father, is still out there, and Warframe kind of, like, the devs never really explain what happens after this. And so a big piece of the hype of this update is because TennoCon 2023 is of course going to show us the new stuff for Warframe, but we have no idea what's going to be after the Duviri paradox. That was the furthest length of information they kind of gave to us in terms of lore, in terms of, you know, game progression. So I feel like a lot of hype behind this mainly is because a lot of players don't know what they're going to receive next. You know, sometimes we can predict which Prime Warframes come out, but in terms of story and content, I think we reached the end point in which they gave us that heads up for. And TennoCon 2023 kind of sets up that playing field on what is next for Warframe. And I think that is the best part of this update, because we finally get done. You know, we get through everything they told us. Now this is like the new chapter. I don't think they're building the Duviri paradox to prep for Soulframe. They did say in the dev stream that the two engines are working hand in hand, so any improvements that Soulframe gets, Warframe will get. Any improvements that Warframe gets, Soulframe will get. They can expand this game so much. Warframe has built to be this adaptiveness. I've seen a lot of people comparing it to Fortnite Creative 2.0, but it's because Warframe has this blueprint in their game in which they can give us anything. They can adapt and create and basically adapt to any type of style or idea that they want to portray to their fans, and that adaptability and creativity is one of Warframe's greatest perk. And bro, all of this is free. Like, this game has done so much for being a free game. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about Warframe lore and give a lot of new players a little hindsight of how crazy this next update is, in case you are still confused on why the Duviri paradox is very hyped up. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know if you guys have any Warframe questions or anything you wanted me to elaborate on in terms of Warframe lore. I'll see you guys in the next video. You guys keep up the grind and be safe, and I'll see you later.
Okay, no help, nigga. I'm straight. Where it at?